I am so excited for this conversation. I have to say, super excited for this conversation. Before we get started, and as we wait for Breon to come in, I have to tell you about my 1 degree of separation from the amazing Harry Belafonte. So his nephew is alumni of the Hip Hop Film Festival. His nephew is an amazing actor and writer. He's following in his uncle's footsteps. He did an amazing project called Ingeniouses. So the legacy lives on. Harry has influenced all of our lives without even knowing people. And I think the great thing about it is that all of you have as well. And it's going to be great to hear and to talk about all of these things, all of the strides that he's made, and how the legacy perseveres. So I'm super excited to talk about this tonight with you guys. I feel like I'm sitting at the feet of giants right now. Super dope.
Oh, thank you for that so much. Yeah, we're excited to share, because that's just what it was. He had a personal touch, he had a mass touch, he had an artistic touch, and they always say save it for the actual thing, but an availability that made you feel that he was really focused on you. And I know it's said about other celebrities and other people, but with him it was really true. He was really focused on you and would remember small details about what you were doing and about family and all of those things.
Yeah. So as we're getting started, I just want to introduce the audience to all of you. All of you have touched my life in a certain way. Now, Jamal, I don't know if you remember, and I'm be very offended if you do not. But my very first year of the Hip Hop Film Festival, you came and you were my guest, and we were at the National Black Theater with Nabi Faison and Sade Lifcott and all of them. They really took me in, and they did the work of making sure that what we were doing at the Hip Hop Film Festival was uplifted. It was the year that Tupac's movie came out. And I remember us having a conversation, and you weren't too happy with some of the portrayals because you were like, things, if we're going to tell someone's story, it should be their story, and it should be authentic, and it should include the people that were a part of their lives. And that conversation struck me, and it guided the way that I've done the festival ever since. So I want to say thank you for that. And it's a testament to the type of folks that you guys are, you, Harry, Warrington. And I think it's important to let people know. So I'm going to take this time to let you introduce yourself to everyone and just talk about the work that you do a little bit before we get into the conversation.
But Boogie, wait a minute.
Yes.
You gave him a great introduction. Now I'm getting introduction. Come on now. You know me too.
You are coming next, my friend. You are coming. You know that. But Jamal, do you remember that?
I absolutely remember that conversation. And there's a part B to that specifically about Tupac and portrayals. And maybe if there's time at the end after our celebratory conversation about Harry Belafonte, we can talk about that. But great to be here. So glad to be interviewed by you, and so proud of all that you've achieved.
Oh, thank you. I'm coming over to love on you and say hey and see what we can do. But tell the folks about, oh my God, you are just a champion of activism and being in the space of helping amplify our voices, people of color, people of all colors and races around the world. Let folks know a little bit about who Jamal is.
I am, hey, Brother Breon, what's up?
Yeah.
Good.
Peace, family, peace. Good to see y'all.
Great to see you. I am a writer and director and producer and work between film and on the film side, narrative film and documentary, feature and television, theater, as Brother Breon knows, music, I'm a professor of film at Columbia University. I've been there for 24 years. Most proudly, though, my work with young people. I'm the co-founder of Impact Repertory Theater, a group of young people in Harlem who, as Harry Belafonte identified himself, artivists, young activist artivists who write their own material and take on the issues of the day, not only in terms of what they do with their work, with the poetry and the hip hop and the music, but in terms of the work that they do in the community. And I have to say, proud father and husband.
It's awesome. Do so much for the community and the global community as well. So this is gonna be a dope ass conversation. I'm ready. Now, let me introduce, well, before Brian came in, correct?
Breon.
Brian
I'm
came
here.
in.
Yes.
Brian. Hi, Brian.
Peace and blessings. How you doing?
Peace and blessings. Now, we have never met personally, but I have read up about you because, of course, Warrington would not have me speak with you and not make sure that I had the resume on deck. Beyond impressed. I am beyond impressed. I'm like, I have to know the work that you've done alone with Mr. Belafonte and your plays, your poetry, how you're in the hip hop space. I don't know if I have enough time to inform everyone about who you are and what you do, but if you can just tell our friends, just give a brief introduction, and then we'll go into some more about your work with being guided by Belafonte.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually just dropping off my son at a basketball game because he's a little 11-year-old LeBron James in the making, and I can't keep him off the court, which is amazing because that's not my sport at all. So, but I have been a student for many years of the Honorable Warrington Hudlin and Jamal Joseph. And so, it's a blessing to be here in their midst because I've learned so much from these brothers. These are big brothers who have shown me so much and helped guide me along my way, as well as Mr. Belafonte. He's been a mentor to all of us, and certainly for me, been someone who's shaped my life. And, even before I met him, the first music I ever sang, my father, who was a Calypsonian in Trinidad and won his way to the Apollo Theater 50 years ago.
Yeah.
It's when I was 7 years old, he gave me a record and said, "Here, this is Matilda, learn that." And I sang that as my first public performance. My first performance outside of the church was Harry Belafonte's Matilda. Matilda, she take the money and run Venezuela. I was like, that was the first Gold Digger song, actually. So I'm from New York. My family came from Trinidad to Brooklyn in the 60s and 70s. I've been an artist and activist my entire life. And I had the opportunity to pursue education as the eldest of 5. My parents poured everything into me. And, for me, in many ways, I had no trouble with the law until I went to law school. And in law school, found myself arrested, thrown in jail for crimes I didn't commit, suing the NYPD. And so that experience shaped my life, changed my life. And so being involved, using my art to build this abolitionist movement, to build this movement, to continue the legacy of our ancestors who've been fighting against racial injustice since we got off the boat, since the first boats got on the show here. I'm a part of that legacy, part of that rich tradition of the Black freedom struggle. And so it's a blessing to be here through all of that. I've managed to leverage my access to some elite, very privileged spaces, places like Columbia and Harvard and NYU, UCLA, where I teach now. I leverage those connections into prisons to build opportunities for brothers and sisters who are behind the walls, behind the bars, to pursue education, to pursue the arts, because as one brother told me, prison is like Medusa. And if you focus on it while you're inside, it will turn you to stone. And so we try to create opportunities for brothers and sisters to actually focus on something else. Theater, like Brother Jamal Joseph has been introducing inside for so many years. Film, like Brother Warrington has been doing and creating opportunity for so many years. Poetry, hip hop theater. So that's been my charge, fighting on the inside and fighting on the outside, using all the tools and gifts that I've been blessed with to try to continue building this movement, building the struggle for our freedom, for our liberation, and for our self-determination. And that's I guess the quick and dirty intro we're gonna start with.
I'm so proud of you. It's so great. Okay, Warrington, I understand now. I get it. Um, so I want to say shouts out to the West Indian Massive,
Blow, blow,
my
blow, blow,
family.
blow. Rah!
And what a lot of people do not know is that, Harry was born in Harlem. He is Jamaican, so he's part of the Massive, and he
Yes.
is Harlemite. So, sorry, sir, but, I know you're from Brooklyn and all of that, but, Harlem.
Well,
Harlem.
I love Harlem. I went to college in Harlem. I used to, Uptown Juice Bar is one of my favorite places to go. National Back Theater launched my show. So I got to give love and respect to Harlem as well. Harry also sang Calypso is the first record to sell 1 million copies in 1956, and Calypso is from the other island. So just to spread the love around.
That's right. Okay, so let's talk about my friend, Mr. Hudlin Warrington. This man needs no introduction. He literally, before we met, was very instrumental in the first 30 years of my life. And he was very instrumental in a lot of folks' life that he had never met. He literally raised me through his films. I was a latchkey kid. My mom did not allow us to watch television unless it was produced by Black folk, had Black folk in it, whether it was a soundtrack, a writing credit, whatever. So when I became a teenager, the first movie that I literally snuck out the house to go see was House Party. And the themes in it, the story that was told, changed my life and changed my view. And then I found out that he was behind making sure that a lot of other folks that came behind him had the same opportunity. What I did not know was that that same opportunity was given to him by Mr. Belafonte. So by essence, we're all kind of, benefactors of these great men. So that is Warrington Hudlin. He is now, not only does he have all the other accolades everyone knows about, but he is an advisor to the Harlem Film House, which is, of course, the most important part to me. And he assists in making sure that our folks have everything that they need and the resources, and helping us provide that so our stories continue to be told, not only for Black folk, but for anyone who has a story to be told that is progressing humanity in the right way. So without any further ado, I introduce you guys to Mr. Warrington Hudlin.
And you can see how good friends we are, because she's teasing me all the time. It's not of a thing when people give you praise and then you realize, a minute, I'm that old? I raised the okay, I'll own that. But and talking Mr. Belafonte would also give me a good perspective, because he was, of course, elder to all of us. And he really he's the person who, if you had a question, for example, when I first saw Occupy Wall Street, I lived downtown. And although I lived in Harlem for a long time, but I lived downtown and I saw what was happening, and I couldn't understand what was going on. So it turns out he was speaking at a place recently. I said, Mr. Belafonte, these people are like, they're doing this, doing that. It seems to highly resemble the 1960s and the freedom rides and the sit-ins. So is it the same thing? Yes, it is. And get down there. That was it. So he was always a resource, even in terms of my organization, the Black Filmmaker Foundation. He knew what I was doing, and I never, of course, he gave me so much advice. I didn't ever ask him to do anything more than advice. But he asked me, so how you doing? I said, well, we raise money every year. He said, okay. I didn't say another word. The next day, my phone rang. With the phone, he says, this is Lou Wasserman. I figured that's Lou Wasserman's office. Oh, no, that is Lou Wasserman. And for Google, anybody doesn't know Lou Wasserman, Google it. This guy is the foundation gangster, quite frankly, of Universal Pictures. He says, I was meeting my good friend, Mr. Belafonte, and he says that you're doing good work in New York. And so there'll be a check on your desk tomorrow. Really? Next day, I had $25,000 check on my desk. Now, remember, I'd never asked for this, but Belafonte is a senior. He knows what you need, and he'll make sure you got it without asking. And then as I begin to work and trying to keep the tradition going, I did a program with internships on Boomerang, which was a big budget movie for the time. And I had a production apprentice in every category, but I couldn't find a black person who the studio would approve. That's okay, fine. Want to approve that? That's okay. I'll fund an intern in each department where you won't allow me to put a black person. They agreed. So I had to have like 20 young people, or people with a medium experience in this position. And I said, I was so proud of myself. I said, this never happened before, never happened before. I said, no, brother, no, it's happened before. I said, who did it? Who did it? I was like, don't take away my thought. He said, Harry Belafonte did it in 1950. I said, what? So I think, I know it was Odds Against Tomorrow, it was some movie he produced way back in the day in which he did the same thing that I was so proud of myself. He beat me to it by like 10 years almost. But the thing he did that was, for me, I was so proud, because when somebody's giving you something, you want to say, what can I give back to you? So there's a TV series he had in the 60s called A Time for Laughter. It is today my favorite comedy special. I mean, he had Pygmy Marker, Mom's Maybe, that very young Richard Pryor. The script was written by famous Harlem poet. Come on, help me. Who's the famous poet in Harlem?
Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes wrote it. It was like amazing. So I'm like saying, so I said, this is Mr. Belafonte. I grew up. See, I'm doing your thing. I grew up with that TV special. I love it. Do you have a copy? He said, no, I don't. I said, really? Okay, so I researched it. It was a copy at the Museum of Broadcasting. I called him up to this, and I want to get access to it. He says, well, we don't own it. But then who owns it? I said, Mr. Belafonte owns it. What? So I called him up and said, hey, man, I found it, and I can't borrow it because it belongs to you. He said, oh, okay. And so I actually got the copy, which I'm happy to put in his hand, that belongs to him, that was someplace owned by corporate America. He just lost track of it. So, and turned out at the time I was the curator and the vice chairman at the Museum of the Moving Image. I was able to show it on the big screen, and everyone just absolutely loved it. So again, at every turn, this is a man who gives you guidance and benefit and just strengthens your moral and political resolve.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I got to meet Mr. Belafonte when I was a teenager in the Black Panther Party. I joined the Panthers when I was 15 in Harlem and went to prison at 16 as part of the New York Panther 21 case. This is the same case that Afeni Shakur was arrested for. And so 21 Panthers were indicted, and we were all facing 360 plus years. And I got out on bail. Afeni Shakur was the first to be bailed out. Bail was $100,000. That's a lot today. In '69,
Yeah.
you can imagine how astronomical that number was. And who we were as Panthers is who we are as Black people. There's a couple of people that work, transit work, and a bus driver, and visual artists, and community organizers, and that and students, and Vietnam veterans. That's who the Panther 21 was.
Mm.
But Afeni got out on bail, and then I was the second person to get out on bail. They lowered my bail because I was so young, so they adjudicated me youthful offender. And I got to meet him at one of the fundraisers for the Panther 21. That's how I became a public speaker. They trained me quickly to go out with Afeni to try to raise money. And he was there and gave money. But he was very worried about us. We were then really standing on the fresh shoulders of the civil rights movement. There was still overlap. And of course, with the loss of Medgar Evers and Dr. King, and the freedom workers in Mississippi. These were people that he knew who had been killed, and he'd also been dealing with his own death threats. And he was really concerned. He thought we were, as he said, brave and beautiful. And Afeni Shakur was something, because Afeni was poetic in whatever she said. And when she met him, she was like, there's some handsome brothers and sisters around here, but you just too much, So that kind of endeared him to us, and he was worried about us, and he was worried about the government being more dangerous than we even realized. And of course, we had that Black militant swagger, the power to people overcome all revolution our lifetime. And he was so right, because so many Panthers just that, the previous year had been killed. We were arrested in '69. Fred Hampton was killed, and it just got worse from there. But his support never waned, but his love and concern from us as his, even at that time, as his children, never waned.
That's amazing.
I want to share a quick story, right? About, we know that he used his charisma and star power to get people involved. Of course, we know about We Are the World. I was so glad when Lionel Richie got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He said clearly for the world to understand, when Harry Belafonte called me to be part of the We of the World, I knew I had to go. He made those calls, and then he literally stepped back to the second or third row, because Quincy Jones was it, and Michael Jackson was it, and this one was it. His mission was to get people together and to motivate them. But here's a story to share. So, but during the civil rights era, he got everybody to come, and, of course, Tony Bennett and, Sidney Poitier. And there was something that they really wanted Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. was a huge star and had the biggest hit on Broadway, which was Golden Boy. And they wanted Sammy to come to be at this event. And he really wanted to come. And the producers would not let him out to come on the days that were needed. I don't know if many people know this story. Harry Belafonte brought out the house, like literally paid them for whatever the theater was grossing, however many seats it had. You can imagine 500 seats, 700 seats, whatever that particular theater was. He brought out the house so that Sammy Davis Jr. could be at this particular event and represent that kind of solidarity and charisma that having him there would be. That's what he would do. When you talk about somebody that really put their blood in front of their sweat and tears, and really put their money and self-worth, literally into the movement, this is who he was.
Jamal, do you know also the story when he was trying to get in this building, they wouldn't let Black people come to the building?
Oh yeah.
And so he bought the building.
Yep.
and all his friends who are, people of color who was similar celebrity status, that's why that building was filled with just amazing folks, because he kind of a jujitsu movement. He just took his arm and reversed that, and now I got it.
Absolutely.
For those of you, you guys have worked with this man closely over the years. What was he like? Like, did he cuss? Did he have a lot of jokes? Was he a super serious person? Every time I saw him, whether it was from afar, he was always
all of the above. He could crack a joke and snap on you to make you laugh. He'd give you the nicknames. My greatest experience, Brianna, I can't quite remember who was there that day, but it was a couple of other giants in the civil rights movement. And they were up at the old, the 1199 office.
Yeah.
And I had been up there, and I was just kind of hanging out, listening to them talk. And they were so funny. And you could see the young Black men and the Harlem Boys or the Alabama, wherever they were from, they were just snapping. And I'll tell her just a little bit about, what I heard, because they said, man, you done moved up in there. They were looking at his office, and, he was up high and they were looking down. I can't remember. If I call his name, you'll know. And he says, man, you done moved up in the world. Look, you high up, and he says, don't get too close to the window. He says, because at your age, Mr. B was about 84 at that time. He said, at your age, he says, you might fall. He says, if I fall, he said, I'm going to grab you by the nuts and take you with me. Don't worry about that. I was on the floor, and they just proceeded to snap like they were young brothers on the basketball court in Harlem. So yeah, he had a hell of a quick wit and a hell of a sense of humor.
Yeah, he
I got
definitely.
one. I got one.
I
So
was like, no way he could be that pretty and he could, they'd let him live. Like he had to be able to crack and play the
Oh yeah.
dozen with the
Oh
best of
yeah.
but here's one. So in fact, it's my most memorable experience of life. It was I think it was it was a Christmas Eve party. And in the room, it's just at his house. And the youngest people in the house in the room was me and Walter Mosley. And we were not young. But in that room was Ossie Davis, Ruby Dee, Catherine Dunham, the bass player, Ron Carter, Eli Wallach. I'm like, how did I get into space? So I'm sitting there with Ossie Davis. So again, elders, funny, in a way that we can't be that funny. We haven't lived long enough. But evidently, during the freedom rides, the bus would stop and everybody get off. They can, take a shower, and sleep in the bed and then get back on and go. So that next day, bus departed. So Ossie looks around and says, "Where's Harry? Where's Sydney?" And they overslept. And so he's turn around. So the bus turns around. So they get back to the place. Now, Harry and Sydney, they don't know what they don't see. Ossie's from the South. He said those guys were so scared. They were sitting there trembling in the out there, waiting for the bus to come back. And he teased them for the rest of the trip about how scared they were. But of course, people were being killed, as Jamal pointed out. So it was a legit thing. But the more he told the story, don't tell the story. But they just laughed and laughed and laughed.
But one of my favorite stories. Go ahead, Brianna. Go ahead. You jump in the circle, bro.
I got one. So we months before we did the world premiere of Lyrics from Lockdown, which I think this will go down as probably one of the last theatrical productions that Harry executive produced as we get ready to go to Broadway. And just last week he was like agreed to be our executive producer for the Broadway run, which I was so excited about because it's the first time a show is going to go from Broadway to prisons around the country. And he was excited, we were excited. But when we were first doing the premiere 10 years ago at the National Black Theater, he would literally kick my ass for 3-4 hours a day after rehearsals. And he'd be like, you could push back if you want, Brianna. And I was like, push back? I can't even afford this time with you. And one time he ended the session like early. We only sat down for an hour. And I was feeling a little salty, a little entitled. I was like, why are you leaving so early? I thought we had more time, brother. And he, you don't got no time for it, brother, no more? He's like, I got to go meet with Marty. I was like, Marty who? He's like, Scorsese. I was like, okay, Scorsese. So I was in my feelings about it a little bit. So I decided just to poke a little fun with him, right? And so he said he had just that weekend before been the grand marshal of the Gay Pride Parade. So I said, brother, I have a whole lot of respect for you at this age, 80 something, finally coming out to the world about your sexuality. Knowing Harry is, as far as Harry's straight as they come. But I was like, let me just see where this lands with him, right? I said, I really have a whole lot of respect and admiration for you, brother, speaking your truth, coming out to the world about who you are and your sexuality, brother. He didn't miss a beat. He turned to me and looked, he said, what you didn't know all that time was that you were the object of my affection. I was like, man, I got no comebacks. You got me.
No comebacks on him.
Listening to
He would surprise you. When I was Breon, when we were doing chapter and verse, Breon was in my film Chapter and Verse, my little indie feature, and we were doing a scene in a barbershop in Harlem. Omari Hardwick was there, Daniel Beatty, who starred in it, and we're filming, and they're like, somebody wants to see you. He had just gotten word, of course, open invitation to the set, but I never called to invite him. But he happened to be in Harlem, and he showed up, and I turned around, and him, he was like, I'm here to make sure you don't break the camera. And I got to tell you, everybody stopped. Everybody turned to mush while he was there. He was like, no, go ahead. Just go ahead and do what you got to do, But just really supportive in that way,
Yeah, absolutely.
So before guys, my next question, I got to shout out our friends in the metaverse who came out to hear about this, and all of them are associated with the arts in some form or fashion, or they're recipients of what you guys have taught me all of these years. I'm teaching them and helping them, and they're helping me So we were kind of like the new age talented 10th out here, these Harlem streets and the streets out here. But I want to say hey to Ronald. I gotta say hi to Tiny at the Raw Dow, Mo Paso, Press B, IT Trey. Like these guys, they really are fans of you guys, and I know they would want me to say hello to you. If you guys have any questions, please make sure you type them. Press B is here as well. Make sure you type them in the comments, and I'll make sure I let our esteemed guests know what your questions are. But here's my next question for you guys in any order. Did Belafonte help you through a hard time? And if he did, tell me what that hard time was and his advice and how you used that advice to persevere.
No,
Well,
he actually, I'm sorry. So
no, go ahead, Ron.
he actually gave me a hard time that I still carry to this day. But tell you how I got there. So he used to have office on the Columbus Circle. So if I come back, I said, let me just pop upstairs and say hello. So I popped upstairs, expecting to say hello for 5 minutes. He said, sit down. Okay. So what I intended to be a 5-minute discussion turned into like an hour and a half discussion. He's telling me these stories, and I'm like, and his the drama and the courage of his life was overwhelming. So at some point, I said, Belafonte, you're so great. You're so great. I was like a, just like, this lame. You're so great. Nope, I'm not great. You mean you did this, you did this, you did this? You're great, you're great. He says, no, I'm not great. So then my admiration went to like irritation. I said, you think I'm stupid? You did this, 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 this. You're great. He was still said, I'm not great. I said, okay, tell you what. If you're not great, then who is great? That was I was playing my ace, right? He paused and said, Paul Robeson is great. That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. And then he said, and when I was a little older than you, but not much older than you, at my house, I would sit with Paul Robeson and W.E.B. Du Bois. Oh. So then I said, I recovered from that shock and said, well, sir, then everything I'm praising you for, everything you did, you're supposed to have done that. If you were doing so, you're supposed to do that. And then, without Mississippi, he says, okay, so you've been here for an hour and a half. What does that mean for you? He dropped that on me. And my whole life, I wake up every day. I said, what am I doing? Or as Ruby D would say, what's my assignment?
That's right.
That's
right.
So, I mean, that was
Ruby.
life-changing. And really, everything I do as a creative artist, as an activist, is about, am I fulfilling my assignment? And sometimes he would have to, he knows that it hit me so hard. And I would see him, it'd be in my eyes. He said, you're doing good, you're doing good. I need that reassurance because it was profound obligation, which I accepted, but it was profound.
So I think
I have a recent personal story, but there's some jewels that I think that we should share with everyone. Probably the greatest Black theatrical company and acting school existed in Harlem, in the basement of the New York Public Library that became the Schomburg.
That's right.
A tiny space known as the American Negro Theater. And that's where Ossie Davis was, Ruby Dee, Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, who's working as a super. Sidney came there to work on his speech, but one of the most brilliant lilty voices that we know. Canada Lee, Roger Furman, who was the founder of the Roger Furman Theater that Rosa Rivers has run faithfully for going on the last 60 years. Gertrude Jeanette, that's who came out of that circle. And not only did all of them go on to significant careers in film and theater, all of them in some way were activists and life changers. So when you talk about Mr. B living almost to be 100, and we're all heartbroken. He was 96 years old, but all of us, I think, were planning what that centennial birthday would look like. but he lived close to 100 years, but hasn't he left us 1,000 years worth of legacy?
That's right.
So Jamal, let me stop you. Let me ask you this question. You're saying that Belafonte was the janitor at the American Theater?
No, he was working in a building, helping his dad, working at a couple of buildings in Harlem, and would make the time. You know, he had come out. He was a World War II veteran. He had served in the Navy, and they were giving these free acting classes. And if you can imagine who was in that room, all of them young, and
Yeah.
all of them
Now
just
let me
wanting to act and doing these little productions. Who
But-
came
but-
out of that is just,
I-
boy, if
I-
you could, if there's a place I could time travel and just be a fly in the wall, you know, as an artist activist, I'd like to be a fly on that wall when they were, you know, when they were youngins learning their craft.
Let me
show
let
how
me
it
let
goes-
hold on. Let me
I-
add something. I don't want to lose the thread. There's something, there's addendum to the story that Jamal just told. I think that I'm out. My cone of silence has been waived now. I was sworn to secrecy, but now I'm gonna tell the story because you know, he reaches in and gets me from the other side. So he told me that he, Cartier, and Ossie Davis was sitting in the room, American Negro Theater on the 35th Street in the basement. And they buddies, they hanging out, they boys, you know, and they young and they all good looking, you know, players. He said the door opened and they all turned around.
Yep.
Walks Ruby D.
It's Ruby. That's right. That's right.
And he said the eyes got big. And they all thinking the same thing, you know. But he said, but Ruby was very astute. She knew which one was a player, which one was serious. So she chose. But let me tell you, when she walked street, all three of these brothers, these are bad brothers. Had the same
Yeah.
idea.
That's right.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Now, the reason why I asked that question is I'm going to show you guys how it comes full circle because I literally have a little bit of tears in my eyes and chills going up my spine. I have a program called Act Up where it's an open mic for writers and actors to meet so that we can produce real work in a spirit of activism. We are in residency at the Schomburg at the American Negro Theater, and it's the first time in over 30 to 40 years it's been used for actors. When they brought us in, when they gave us the space, they said, you know, here is where Harry started, where all the Ossie started, where Ruby started, so on and so forth. And I was like, that's dope as hell. So we've been doing it for almost a year now. Well, I think we're in our like 5th to 6th month there at the American Negro Theater in the Schomburg. So to hear this, you guys gotta understand, like, I know that our path is blessed. We're all supposed to be together. You know, who Warrington, Jamal, we've had this, you know, I've kind of been under your tutelage, unbeknownst to you for a while, but you've supported me. All of these people acting in this space of activism to make sure that our voices are heard and that our talents are heard and we can use art for activism is still alive. So, oh my God, like I have like super chills right now. You know what I'm saying? Because that legacy persists. We could be gone, but the work that we do, it speaks and it lives. So I'm gonna shut up now. I'm gonna let y'all continue.
Well, to that, you know, I know the joke that you know about the bus trip that Warrington told, and you know how Sydney and Harry were kind of shook, you know, because they were down in the South. But one of my favorite stories, and you know, Warrington and Breon, we all know the story, so help me tell it. One of my favorite stories is the weekend there was a house bombing in Mississippi, and the movement was in trouble. So this house had been bombed. It was a Black family's house. Half of the house was blown away. The family was still there. The chapters were in trouble, and he gets the call for help, and Mr. B, within about 3 or 4 days, raises, you know, close to $100,000. His money, tapping on other people. He's got a little suitcase. He calls up Sidney Poitier, his best friend, and he was like, "Yo, Sid, what you doing this weekend?" And he was like, "Man, I ain't got nothing going on." He was like, "Well, come with me." Now, Kennedy was the president. Bobby Kennedy was the attorney general, and you know, Mr. B was in, you know, contact with everybody. Bobby Kennedy knew they had intel on what was going, and he said, "Don't go. This is a really dangerous situation. You should not go." And Harry said, "No, we're going to go." Now, at the time, they are the two biggest stars in the world. Let's be clear. Not the two biggest black stars in the world, the two biggest stars in the world. What analogy could I use? Is it Denzel and Jay-Z on a trip? Is it somebody? Imagine you two.
Might
They
be
go
Beyonce.
down. Huh? Right,
Might
exactly.
be Beyonce.
They go down, and but he says, well, I'll send some. Bobby Kennedy says, well, I'll send some FBI's to meet you, to go meet you. So here they are, this little valise of money. The two of them go down by themselves. They land in the airport. It's one of them crazy little prop jets. And as they're walking through the airport close to midnight, there's an old black guy mopping the floor, right? And Sidney looks at Harry, Mr. Portier looks at Mr. B and says, that don't look like no FBI's to me. They get in the car, and as they are driving, the brother who picks them up, is it Blue? Was the brother's
Blue.
name?
Yeah.
And
Blue.
as they're driving, Ku Klux Klan cars come behind them and try to ram them off the road. Blue knows whatever we do, we can't stop. So he's taking the back roads and the side roads. Now they see cars approaching them, right? And so they go, well, this is it. This has really got to be it. But it turns out that the caravan racing toward them are the civil rights, the local brothers and sisters and the civil rights worker that outnumber the Klan veer off. They get there, of course, they deliver the money, they go to see the family, and then they go like, well, we got a place for you to stay, we're going to take you to the hotel. Mr. B says, no, we're going to stay here with the family, right? It's a little house to begin with, and the front of the house is blown off. So the only bed for them is a little tiny bed in the kids' room. So you have to picture these two virile young men sleeping in the bed together, trying not to touch knees and elbows and all of that. Oh, it's such a great story, but they inspired folks so much. They did the speaking, they came back. And the way that Mr. B tells the story is both scary and funny. And when they get back to New York, Sidney says to Harry, he says, yo, Harry, he says, next time you want to do something for the weekend, don't call me. Right. But of course, Mr. Portier continued to be there, you know. But just in the way he tells that story and the way they were risking it at the height of their career in a real way, willing to risk their lives, you know, just speaks to who he was and who the people around, how he inspired the people around him to be.
You told it great. You told it great. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so it's your turn, sir. I am looking for at a time when you were faced with adversity. What advice did he give you? And how is it still relevant?
Well, I was about 2015. I was thinking about coming to LA, and he was like, don't go. He was like,
that voice, I always make that voice when y'all talk about Harry. Like he really talks like that. Hold on.
Yeah, well, he had this slight thing with his larynx that when he spoke in a low tone, and he loved the scratchiness of his voice though. He likened it to Louis Armstrong. He said it gave his voice a distinct thumbprint, right, that allowed him to stand out. So he loved it. He loved that aspect, and we loved it too, you know. So, but he told me not to go, and I sat there in his living room. And Pam, his fantastic wife, Pam Belafonte, was made us cookies and almonds. He was eating all the cookies. I was eating the almonds. But and you know, I had been working with him and with Gina Belafonte for some time, and I was just like, I have an opportunity to go to the West and just figure out what that's about. You know, so many Black artists don't get real love and appreciation till they leave. Jimi Hendrix, you know, James Baldwin, you know, go down the list, right? And he was like, I don't know, you know. So we talked about it, went back and forth, listened to the pros and cons. You know, and he was, you know, making the case that I should be back in New York as much as possible and not leave if I could avoid leaving. And then he proposed a play for me to read. He was like, there's a play you should go read. And the play was Juno and the Paycock by the Irish writer Sean O'Casey. And he's like, you should play the young son in the family. And you should get Danny Glover to play your father. We should get Viola Davis to play your mother. He said, and I should direct it. And I was like, why is this Irish play matter to you so much? He said, this was the play that he performed in at the Negro Ensemble Theater when Paul Robeson came backstage. And the first words he said to him were, I had to come back here and see who was ruining my friend's play. So Paul Robeson's first comments to him were like, you know, an insult. Like, and but the beautiful thing is during that same conversation, there's a knock at the door. Pam gets it and she says, there's one of your friends there to see you. Who walks in the door? It's Danny Glover. Danny Glover walks in the door. So I give up my seat and get to the floor and he takes the chair and I'm looking at the 70-something-year-old Danny. And at this point, it was 90-something, early 90s, 90-year-old Harry. And the same way he was kicking my ass, he starts kicking Danny Glover's ass. And I was like, wow, even if in your 70s, you need mentorship from the 90s something. That was a huge lesson for me. Because I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, I'm just cracking 40, but I'm like, and I need advice from the 90-something-year-old brother. No, Danny came too. And Harry was like, why are you doing this zombie movie? What's wrong with you? It doesn't make any sense. What's going on? And Danny's pleading the case. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to do some more experimental things. I got a new agent, help me do some independent projects I'm really excited about. And he's like, all right, I don't know, but you got to make better decisions. I was like, whoa, you know, lesson for me, because it showed me that it never stops. We always need elders. We always need mentors. And then, you know, he's an ancestor. He's an angel watching over for us. And I know he's probably going to do even more in the afterlife than he did in his life. So I'm looking for the blessings he's going to rain down because I definitely saw them throughout my life.
So I want to drop this real quick too. He not only mentored talent that came his way, he was on the hunt for talent and the hunt for young activists, right? So Breon, you're a case in point, you know what I mean, of seeing like this brother's got something special, you know, let me help him tell this story and mentor him and do the journey and you know, I'm gonna plug our stuff. You know, Breon's coming to Broadway,
Yes.
Lyrics for Lockdown. I've
Yes,
seen it many
yes.
times. I had the honor of guest
Directed it.
directing it a couple of times.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
really amazing. But Miriam Makiba's story, Breon, when you coming? Let's let people know.
Yeah, with dates coming soon, late summer, early fall. Late summer, early fall.
But
I got-
Miriam Makiba, so he just didn't start going to South Africa, you know, to visit Nelson Mandela. You know, he didn't start going when it was cool. He made it cool to go. He risked his life to go at a time when you couldn't. And he discovered Miriam Makeba as a teenager in a township in one of those 10 shack clubs where she was singing. And she had tried to, you know, release some records and to do whatever. And he said to her, let's record a record together, right? And that way you'll be introduced to the world. And the rest, as they say, is history. That's what he did. This is how he embraced impact repertory theater, the young people, you know, our youth program in Harlem. I mean, it not only just came by and visited and gave the young people advice, but had impact included in every important concert that he did. He would make sure that the young people were there. He liked the energy and the platform on it, but to give them the voice and have them sing on the biggest stages beside all of the other stars that kind of showed it to do the event. That's who he was.
Yeah.
There's a great film that Susan Rostock is making called Following Harry. And it's amazing because it has one of his last interviews. He had already lost his eyesight. And so you'll know this just because I said this, but you can't tell because he's looking into the future. So he's looking at something. So he may not be able to see the cameras and the interview and Suzanne who's doing the interview. And he starts off by saying, have I done enough?
No, yes, sir.
Can you imagine? That's the premise of the film, Following Harry. All of the things he's done. And this man literally a year or so before he passed away is asking the question, have I done enough?
Yeah.
On that note, have you guys done enough? I know with Warrington, I know I am a direct recipient of the love that Harry gave to him because he gives me that love unapologetically. and he doesn't have to. And I'm thankful for it, because without his help, his assistance, his credibility, the amazing work that we do here would go unseen and unheard.
That's right.
So how do we continue to create more Little Harrys? Are we doing enough? Are we on mission? I know you guys have a lot of things going on, and sometimes it seems, heavy to continuously help people, especially if they're ungrateful. That takes. But there's some of us, right? Like all the people that's sitting in the metaverse right now, in the Harlem metaverse, in the We Watch metaverse. These are people that are crying out to also be Little Harrys and also be activists. How do we take these lessons that you guys have learned and continue to extend without overextending ourselves?
And may I just adjust it slightly? We're not looking for little Harrys. We're looking for us to understand that what his spirit was.
Yes.
And because that
Yes.
spirit go through, it's the vessel will go from generation to generation. That's we're trying for you to become your best you, your most defiant you, your most insightful you. So he educates by example. And if we take the lessons, we take it from there.
Yeah. And let me jump in, because I do have to hop off and go chase down an 11-year-old playing point guard. But I do want to just jump in and say, have we done enough? No, I don't think we've done enough, but I think we're on the path. We're definitely on the path. The spirit of Brother Harry is the spirit of Sister Harriet, right? And so we're carrying that torch, And I know Warrington Hudlin executive produced my first music video, Ancestors Watching. Jamal Joseph directed Lyrics from Lockdown. The first time it was performed in a prison at Rikers Island, at Graterford Prison, So I know directly from these brothers that, what my assignment is. And my assignment is to honor this tradition that, as Brian Stevenson says, we stand on the shoulders of people who did so much more with so much less, And that's the message right there. It's like, we are on the shoulders of folks who did so much more with so much less. We didn't have, I know when Warrington and Jamal were in their 20s and 30s and 40s, like they didn't have access to half the stuff that I've had access to. And so I have an even greater responsibility to pass on that spirit to the folks I work with, the folks coming up after me, to say, look, if they could do all that they have done, we have to take it to the next level, because we can organize movements through using all kinds of technology that wasn't available at one point. And so we have that responsibility. I embrace that responsibility, and I feel blessed to be able to carry that torch and carry that spirit, and to have these brothers have my back in all that work that is ahead of us.
And the thing, and the thing that Breon does, that Warrington does, the thing I think that we all have in common is that we understand that even as we're trying to hustle and bustle to get our things done, we know we have to have young people right there with us and mentor, and just to do it and to leave that word and to plant that seed that we'll come back later to see blossom. So I want to say to everybody that's making those projects, and I know they're great projects, and I know they're about arts and activism and all of that, where's the person behind you? Where's that kid behind that may not even understand, what a script is, or how film comes together, or that they can write their own books. We're all of them that you can shadow and sit with them just to have a slice of pizza and just to talk about what you do, and to let them know that you see greatness in them. They'll remember that. They'll remember that if you do it at 8, they'll remember it at 18. They'll remember that at 28, at 38, and 48, and remember that they weren't too young to dream and they weren't too young to mentor.
That's right.
That's right.
In fact, CR, we can actually extend this discussion in our various metaverses where We Watch and Harlem Film House.
Yes.
And have our avatars, who people who are watching now, have that discussion.
Yeah.
I can stay for a few more minutes. I just want to say too, be on the lookout, as I said, for Breon's Lyrics from Lockdown, and please, Dear Mama, which I'm pleased to be involved in as an EP, and I'm in it. I think when we met years ago, I said that Faney was sad. We were all sad because they didn't get that Tupac story right. I think with this 5-part series, Alan Hughes brilliantly directing, Nelson George and I, executive producing, that not only did we get a Faney and Tupac right, but we got the spirit of the times and the movement right. And so, please, please everybody, before we switch over and before we do whatever, watch Dear Mama.
Absolutely.
Yes,
You're right.
And
absolutely.
you know what, Jamal, we have to talk because the Hip Hop Film Festival has grown into a massive beast since you joined us that first year. And I think it's time that we use what we've amassed to help that along, both here in IRL, which is in the real world, and in the metaverse. You'd be surprised the people that are in the metaverse. You have a whole audience of folks watching you like right now that
And
are
they're waiting to hear from you. They waiting right now. You help. These people want to talk. Let's go talk to them.
I can
Guys,
take
I gotta
some
hop
talk.
off.
I was supposed to
I
be
gotta
out by
hop
8, but I can hang till 8:10.
I want to say, I just want to say peace and blessings. I do gotta run, but I want to say I'm looking forward to my next collaboration with Warrington, with Jamal, and my first collaboration with Harlem Film House, because I got roots at the Schaumburg too. So peace and blessings, family. Much love.
All right.
Blessings.
Peace out now.
All right.
Peace out.
everybody standing up and cheering. So Jamal, we definitely have to, me, you, and Warrington at some point got to sit down. I'll come by the offices over there and show you what we're doing. I think it'll be very, and that story needs to be told right. And you have a lot of filmmakers, directors, and producers here in the metaverse who live all over
Do we
the
have
world.
any questions from them, Boogie?
Let me see. Hey guys, y'all got any questions?
And Demetrius, do I have any questions when we watch?
From the Harlem Film House, you guys have any questions? They're all just giving like mad love. Queen Hazel's here. Warrington.
Demetrius, and we watch together. What's happening over there?
No one's stepped up to ask a question yet, but I told them that they can.
Good. Jamal, what's so excited to me, man, is that after begging for places to show films, and we watch together, we have 3 screening rooms.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay.
and in fact, we also have a booth for the Columbia University. So if you want to do some after hours meetings, it's all there for us. We're truly trying to create a space where people can connect and always talk about the things we watch together. So so no questions from Harlem Film House?
Folks are they came to listen and to so I think people love to hear these stories because they are the same stories, but to be able to soak in the knowledge and know that they have, one degree of access next to you guys and be able to hear about the new projects you're doing is important. They're all clapping and cheering and throwing up hearts, and I think that's enough for them right now.
Thank you. That's good. Well, with that, Warrington, again, thank you. And, whenever you call, I'm there.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
follow up. We'll circulate our contacts. We'll continue the conversation, and we'll all be back together soon. All right?
Boogie,
Everybody.
thank you.
Take
love
care.
And Jamal, I love you as well, my brother. I can't wait to see you again. You're right down the street, so let's get up together.
We'll make sure. All right?
Okay.
Peace and much love.
Peace out.